Diana, hi, hello, welcome to the Female Startup Club podcast.
Thank you for having me, Dune. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Me too. So you're in LA, it's raining.
I'm in LA. Yes, it's raining. Nothing to brag about today, but talk to me end of the week. It's getting sunny again.
Yeah, you guys are so lucky with the weather. It's good all the time. I feel like I've moved back to Australia specifically for the weather, but like I arrived here and it's El Nino, so it's just raining all the time. Although I actually feel like the last 2 weeks has been great, but when I first arrived, it was like pouring rain every day, and I was like, "Yep, woo, weather's great."
Well, you're gonna miss the warm weather even more. So when it comes back, you're gonna be that much more grateful for it.
I know. I mean, any sunny day, I'm like, get me outside. It's so beautiful when it's sunny, especially by the beach.
We hike a lot here too. We hike, we have beaches. I think similar lifestyle to what maybe Australians do.
Absolutely similar lifestyle. I totally know those vibes. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm back in Australia. I'm so happy to be here. But enough about me. Let's get into your story. Tell me about Magic Dates. What is your business all about and what's your brand ethos?
Yes, so with Magic Dates, my idea was always to use dates as a symbol of cultural connection. I grew up eating dates in the Middle East. I'm Syrian Palestinian, and it's such a staple in our culture and like my household specifically. You know, we take boxes of dates to family gatherings, just like you would with chocolate here. Such a big part of our culture, all Middle Eastern cultures. And so to me, that was just the perfect vehicle for communication and to really share about the Middle Eastern culture, which can be so elusive to a lot of people. We don't have a lot of representation in the West, especially here in the United States. And so to me, this was sort of like the vehicle and the way to share more about where I come from and my people vis-a-vis this delicious fruit that is just nature's candy.
Wow. Wow. So cool. I love dates, by the way. I feel like we need to see more dates everywhere. They're a vibe.
Yes, they're gonna save us because honestly, we're just eating so much refined sugar and then all these like sugar alternatives now. I'm just not a fan of. It's so funny. I just had something with monk fruit today for the first time. And both me and my husband had the same reaction where we had this like really weird blood pressure dropping and I started sweating. And I think it's because your taste buds register something sweet, but then your brain doesn't actually get the nutritive value of sugar and it's expecting sugar and it like releases insulin or something into your bloodstream when it shouldn't. And that's why I'm also like so against, so many different sugar alternatives that are being used now. We don't have like super solid research on them yet, but in my mind, it's like just have sugar directly from its source, from the fruit. It's the whole fruit that has the fiber and that has all the micronutrients and phytochemicals that really offset any negative impact sugar might have.
So you grew up with dates. You grew up having this as part of your culture. Were you always wanting to start a business or when did this kind of light bulb moment go off for you and where does your entrepreneurial journey actually start?
I think like any entrepreneur may tell you, you're always an entrepreneur at heart. You may just not know it yet. It's just something you're discovering rather than becoming. I think it's just something that's always there that you then, fall into. And I didn't know that I wanted to start a business all along. I did different things. I studied marketing in college. And from there, I did different things. I always wanted to be in food, like in the food space. I wanted to either become a chef and I did that for a little bit. I did some catering. I did some private, like personal chefing. I just wanted food to be a bigger part of my life. I'm a super taster. I cook. I love to eat. And so how can I make this my career as well? But having tried all those other things, it just wasn't quite it. I didn't just want to be in the kitchen, like cooking all the time. I wanted something that was not that cooking isn't challenging, but something more challenging, like a cerebral and more intellectual level. And I started doing real estate, and that was also something that was not my calling. I mean, it just was not something that like my heart was into. But the reason I wanted to do real estate was because I felt like it was that perfect medium between being in a corporate space, but then also being independent enough like an entrepreneur. I guess I was just too scared to jump and dive completely into what entrepreneurship is. And from there, I felt that I just wasn't contributing the way I wanted to in the world. I wanted my life to have purpose and for me to like have work that meant something and that was like helping people. And so I actually wanted to go to law school. I wanted to study international rights law. And I took the LSAT, which is an exam here that you take in the US that you might be familiar with, to help you get placed in law schools. So I took that in 2016. I was studying for a few months. And at the same time, I had a friend approach me He'd invested in this paleo ice cream sandwich company. And he said, will you help us make a recipe vegan? We're doing some recipe testing and just some like formulation and R&D, because he knew I was in the food space just in terms of like my skill set. And just that little bit of like dabble I had in that world, that was like just a little bit of a little taste. I'm like, wow, what if I do this? And so that same person goes to me, what if we start a business together? So I was at a fork in the road where I was either going to go down this path of becoming a lawyer or going to law school and studying, for that, or starting this business. And so it just was this very like intrinsic thing, and I had to trust my instinct, and I moved forward with Magic Dates.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah, you were really at the crossroads. That's crazy. Your life was really pulling you in two different directions. How did you come up with Magic Dates? Like, how did you know that was the idea? Like, were you riffing on all sorts of different businesses to get to that? Or were you like, I know what it is straight out of the gate?
It's a bit mythical to think that something screams at you immediately, like this is what it is. Maybe that's true for some people. To me, that's never really been my experience. That it was like this one thing that was so black and white and clear cut. That's when we have to like trust your intuition and listen more to that, and just do your homework and do your research as well, of course. So initially for me, I actually wanted to potentially do something in food tech, which was more about like preservation of food. I've shopped organic a lot, and I would go to the farmers markets, and that produce goes bad very quickly. And so I thought, what if there was something that you can store the produce in that would make it last longer? And so I was thinking of like organic ways to do that, using rosemary extract and different things. And starting a snack business was sort of on the back burner, and like specifically dates. And again, the date part did pop up in my mind just because of my upbringing with it. But I had that on the back burner. And then one time my partner and we went to this meeting here in LA. It's like a food scientist meeting, and they have all these branches and just different like chapters all over the US. It's called SCIFs. So I was at this meeting, and he and I were there like super early. So we got to choose like our seat. And then this woman comes, and she ends up being the keynote speaker, and she sits next to me. And we start talking about different things. It turns out she's the one who created the nutrition label here in the US and just has done so much for like produce and crops and whatnot. Then she told me, well, if you have any questions, just, give me a call. Here's my card. And she gives me her card, and it says Date Research Institute on it. And I had not said anything to her about dates at that point. So I'm like, wow, I believe in science and I believe in just life guiding you in a certain direction. I'm like, you know what? I think we need to explore this date idea a little bit more.
Wow, that's serendipity right there. That's cool. I love that. This happens, you have this kind of moment, you decide to explore this as, a business idea. How do you actually get started? Like, what kind of capital did you need to invest to get the brand kind of off the ground? And what were those early days like?
My partner and I at the time committed to investing 50,000 US dollars each into the business. So we were only together for a few months. Once he left, I was on my own. So basically, I put in about $100,000. It was honestly a number I pulled out of my butt. It wasn't necessarily, I had such little experience at the time, and like such little knowledge, that that's just what I knew I can do, at the time. Everything, just when you speak about serendipity, I feel like when you make a choice, things either gravitate towards you, resources, people, or you just start seeking them more. And so therefore you notice them more. And so mentors started coming in my path at the time. Again, like this very serendipitous thing and way of things happening. I was at a coffee shop, and we were talking about innovation, what we wanted to do with dates that would have been different. And then like we caught someone's ear, and he happened to be an innovation consultant who works with like Mattel and Red Bull and all these like super global companies. And that's sort of how it started, where I got my first mentor for the first several months to help me along the journey of doing our research and figuring out what do customers actually want. And I started interviewing customers. We didn't have any customers yet, obviously. And so we would go on like forums, like Facebook groups, and we would find people that were enjoying other products. And we'd reach out to them and say like, hey, do you have 30 minutes to like talk to us about an idea that we have? We spoke to acquaintances, not friends, but acquaintances. So they were more comfortable sharing more with us. And we just started gathering data and creating something called the consumer journey map, which basically really gets to the core of why people do what they do and buy what they buy, and like consumer behavior. It's not just for sustenance, with food. There's so much more emotion, especially with food products.
Gosh, so interesting. And I think that's one of those things that, like, one of the pieces of the puzzle that sometimes people can forget. You have this great idea, you go out, you go 50 million miles an hour, but you forget to actually stop and interview people who could be your potential customer and get that feedback and kind of let that spark new ideas and kind of build on the idea that you already have. Once you go through that kind of phase of customer interviews and, feedback, how do you come up with your product? Like, how do you get to the stage of being like, yep, I've got a manufacturer or like a co-packer, great. Finding this person and being like, okay, here's what we want, here's what we need, let's get, a batch done.
So, first we started doing some R&D so we can land on the flavors that we wanted to use. So first of all, we came up with our values. I wanted it to be plant-based, no added sugar was like the most important thing. And then using very nutrient-dense ingredients so that you feel like you're eating something that is not only a snack, but it also satisfies more than that for you. So it actually can hold you between meals, and it becomes like not a meal replacement, but a snack that actually sustains you and gives you the energy you need throughout your day. And so once we landed on those values, I started recipe developing. This is a part that I was good at, that I was comfortable with, that I was excited for. And we started off with like 12.5 flavors and slowly narrowed it down and did like taste testing all over. I have some friends who worked at different companies, and we'd go to their lunchroom and just set up some flavors and just get some honest feedback. And we finally landed on 4 flavors, our hero flavors. This was our line that was not covered in chocolate. So this is our uncoated line. And we have the coconut, the chocolate, and the lemon. We also had a matcha at the time. And we pulled that one. We decided that would be more of a seasonal item. So we decided to launch with 3. To your question about co-manufacturing, this is where the research really comes in. At this point, I knew that I needed to find a turnkey partner, meaning somebody who would charge us one fee with everything included in it, versus something called a tolling agreement, which is where you source the raw materials and you're just paying for the labor. And so early on, you really want it to just be as smooth as possible because there's so many moving pieces. Like sourcing your own raw materials is just can be a lot. And turnkey was just the ideal thing for that stage of our business. So there was a lot of research that needed to be done because manufacturers don't really advertise themselves in the same way that a brand does. They don't really work that way. And so you really have to do some digging, some referrals are very helpful. But ultimately, I used a platform that specifically was a search engine for co-manufacturers. Did find ours there. And then like subsequently, the manufacturers we're with now also happened to be on there. We just didn't use that search engine for them. I'll find out the name.
Don't worry, I'll follow up with you afterwards and we'll put it in the show notes for anyone listening who wants to check that out.
That would be great. Yeah, for sure. So finding someone who's willing to do low MOQs for you, minimum order quantities, is really important, especially for a perishable product. You just don't want to be sitting on a bunch of inventory so early on when you don't have an outlet for it and you haven't started selling it yet. So we found that, and I did R&D in my kitchen initially. So it was just here, at home, I wasn't selling that product. So it was okay that I was doing it in my kitchen. But then we produced it in the facility and we would just put it in homemade bags. So like hand packed, nothing super professional. I didn't have our packaging at that point. And I started selling it at the farmers market. So farmers markets are very popular in California. So I was lucky that way to just have this very quick turnaround outlet for our bites. And I would go every Sunday, from like 8 to 2. And I just remember my first sale ever. It was like this woman named Diana and her mom, Betty. I'll never forget. And they were actually wearing purple. It's my favorite color. So I remember that. And it's such a special moment when you're like, wow, I just created something that someone like wants to actually like pay money for. And we just got feedback from there. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Just to really find out what people were interested in. How's the price point? All that. So again, more listening, more research, more talking to customers, which is something you always want to be doing.
So you're in the markets every Sunday, 8 till 2. You're learning, you're listening. How do you kind of keep getting the word out there, and how do you grow outside of the markets?
This is where now in hindsight, I've learned that like an omni-channel approach is really, the ideal way. This is back in 2017 where yes, the internet of course was around, but sales of food was not such a big thing yet. That really expanded during COVID, more so than any time before, where people were like, okay, buying their food online. And so in 2017, we're not set up for D2C. basically. Whereas now in hindsight, I would have set us up for that much sooner. We started offering D2C in 2019. And so I think I would have just gotten that going a little bit sooner so that we can actually start running ads and really capturing people where they were. But we took the traditional approach of brick and mortar and was actually going door knocking to like all my favorite like retailers and coffee shops and yoga studios here in LA, because this product is great anywhere and just meets so many snacking or fulfills so many snacking occasions. And like the first 30 accounts we got were literally just from me going door knocking and asking them if they want to buy Magic Dates.
Amazing. Wow. And then did you kind of like start working with a distributor to kind of expand that? Or was it more just you hired a salesperson? Like how did you kind of keep growing on those first 30 people? Accounts rather?
So we do a lot of demos early on, which is really great because then you get people to try it. There's nothing like just a taste test to sell your product, especially if it's actually good. During one of my demos, I actually met a person who was coming in to like stock the shelves, and it turned out it was like a local distributor here in LA. And so we started working with them and they got us into like another 100 locations. We still work with them today. I mean, 5 years in, it's super small scale. So this is not really a way to scale per se, but it was definitely a great way to get started.
Amazing. At some point, you get on Shark Tank. Let's talk about the Shark Tank experience and what that impact was like for your business. I read that you like applied 4 times before getting on. You were super passionate about being on Shark Tank. Tell me about the experience. What was it like?
Yes. So we definitely were not ready. And I say we, by the way, it's like the royal we. It was just me. So it's I. But Magic Dates, the collective we were not ready for Shark Tank in 2018, 2019, 2020. And those were the years that I applied that I did not get on. And actually, as a matter of fact, when I did get on finally in 2021, one of the producers came up to me and she's like, finally, you made it. I've seen your application so many times. So I was really glad that you finally made it. So it was so funny. And I've seen her name in email correspondence because she would email me back when we were just kind of going back and forth early on for all those other castings. And so I recognized her name and I was like, oh my God, I'm finally here. It's like so surreal to actually have it happen. And I think the reason we were not ready, as a matter of fact, I know that's the reason, is because I was not fully owning our story. Like everything I shared with you about dates being a symbol of cultural connection, where I come from and my connection to dates was not something I was embodying with our brand. So if you look at some of our old branding from when we launched up until really 2021, it looks completely different. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but it's a great case study in branding.
Your branding now is phenom.
It's amazing. And it's like, and I feel it. Like you just, again, I feel like your body sends you messages where for the first 3-4 years, I didn't feel aligned with it. I'm like, something doesn't feel right here. I'm going out, I'm selling my product, but like I have anxiety about it for some reason. And it wasn't until the shift happened with the branding and that the voice was what it was supposed to be that I actually felt like so excited and like elated to share more and to sell it, because I felt like I was now truly selling the vision.
I feel like you've shared just 2 really good, lessons that people really need to remember. The first is persistence. Never give up. Yes, you're going to get rejected. You're not going to get that thing that you're aiming for. But if you keep trying, like good things will come to you. And the second one is where you start isn't where you finish. Everyone wants everything to be perfect at the very beginning and, amazing. But your brand is an evolution, and where you start isn't where you finish. It's okay to change, to evolve the brand and kind of like come into it as you go through it and as you build it. That's amazing.
I feel like you have to treat your brand like a person. I mean, it truly is what it is, because even when we first started, even with the old branding, even though I didn't align with it, I just understood that a brand has a voice. It's going to evolve like a person. There are archetypes that we were using to decide what our brand was going to embody. So archetypes are basically these like symbol characteristics, adjectives and just different like personality types that you want either your brand to represent, or like people can have archetypes too. So for example, there's like the magician, there's like the everyday person, there's the lover. And so one of our archetypes was the magician. And that's how, Magic Dates ended up coming about. I initially thought it was just like a tester name. And then the more I studied it, I'm like, oh, this actually really fits for some reason. I like this, because we want it to be that aspirational brand. And, when they say perfect is the enemy of the good or something, I forget what the exact saying is, but it's so true. It's like you just cannot get stuck in that cycle of like something has to be perfect. It never will be. What even is that? Like what even is perfection? Like what are you comparing it to? So it just has to be good enough, and then you can iterate and like keep making it better.
I totally agree. Back to Shark Tank. I digressed. You get offered a deal from Kevin O'Leary. I think it was 150,000 for 33% or something along those lines. What's it been like kind of after the show working with him? And then following that, what was it like when the show aired?
So yes, he's very particular about saying that it was 33% and a third, because I say that on the show. I'm like, you're going to take a third of my business? And he says, no, 33 and a third. so, so it's like he's very specific.
33.3.
I'm like, okay, got it. So our experience, it took us a while to close the deal just because just the nature of things. There was a lot of back and forth, and it was like almost 10 months in before we actually inked the deal, which was just a couple of months ago. So we actually had our first strategy call recently. So everything is truly in its infancy, but where I see Kevin, fitting in, and where I know he sees, himself and his team fitting in, is really just opening those doors for us. Because, as he says, it's like, we're working hard, we're doing our thing here, but having someone like him with those relationships, but backing us and having his name on, basically, like, it offers so much credibility to what we're doing, that someone like him believes in our mission, our vision. He's half Lebanese, so I believe he truly gets this story, and what we're trying to do really is the value that I see, in addition to, the PR opportunities that we'll have. So for example, he was on a podcast a couple of months ago before we even signed the deal, and he's talking about female founded companies and the businesses he's invested in. And then our name popped up. And like immediately we saw a spike in sales that day. I mean, I wasn't even expecting. I literally woke up and I didn't even know who the podcast host was. Honestly, it wasn't a show targeting females, but my brothers knew about it, and they're like, "Have you seen, Kevin O'Leary talking about you on so and so podcast?" I was like, "I did now."
That's so cool. I love that for you.
I know, it's awesome. I love those surprises.
Yeah, a nice surprise.
So we were expecting a huge spike in sales. It's something that you absolutely have to be prepared for. We aired on a Friday. You immediately, just to my inbox, you just watch those sales like coming in. It was insane. Thousands of orders, just thousands. I think we ended up getting like 3,500 orders or something in total. I mean, it's thousands of orders that continue to trickle in for like 2 weeks after, because people are, fans are watching the show. In hindsight, they're missing some episodes. They're going back and catching up. It streams on Hulu here in the US. So people are catching up there. They're catching it on different streaming services like Amazon Prime. And so for 2 weeks, it was just nonstop, which was awesome. And we were prepared for it. We produced enough inventory at the time. I actually went to where my co-manufacturer is located, because it's not in Los Angeles. And I was there for 3-4 days expecting that spike, so I can also help fulfill and get orders out the door. I think got most orders out the door on time, like 90% of orders, and then just had a little bit of lag time for the next batch, but it was great.
Wow. And since then, since that's aired and you've kind of had these PR experiences and things like that, what are the things that are shifting the needle for you now in terms of your marketing and kind of leaping forward?
Growing our email list has been a really big thing, because it's such a great way to directly communicate with our customers in a more nuanced way than these like short form videos that you find on like social media. And so Shark Tank helped us do that. Social media helps us do that as well. And so for us, really harnessing that email list and that direct communication, where we're able to share our message on a deeper level, to share cultural content, to share the value of, having a snack like Magic Dates that really helps you bridge that gap between wanting to stay healthy but still indulge in something sweet and like delicious. And that's been a big piece for us. And then also really figuring out that the machine of Meta, it was something that I was intimidated by for a long time. And it definitely has changed. We came in at a time where Meta has changed because of the data policies that Apple has instilled. And as a customer, it's something that I appreciate as an Apple customer. But then as a business person, it's made it a little bit more challenging to like find the right people. And so it's ever changing. I mean, these are our marketing channels. Something I've learned about marketing is that consumer behavior and psychology does not change. We're wired the way we're wired. So if you read marketing books from like the 50s and 60s, the principles still apply. It's just that the tools change. So whether it's now a reel or an ad or whatever it might be, it used to be radio, it used to be TV. The messaging is the same. At the end of the day, customers are here. They want to get here. And then how do you help them how do you help them get there, basically, is what your product's doing. And so that's just something that I think is core to any marketing effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, the Meta, Facebook, Apple, it's a big shift. I feel like people are really still kind of like trying to find their feet after that all happened last year.
I know, for sure. I think for us, we have a Shark Tank ad, going that has been doing really well for us, showing magic dates and recipes. So you really have to test and iterate a lot. Some things just didn't work, like straight up product trust, for example, for us didn't work, whereas for other companies it does. So you have to find out what works for you, and it's all about testing and really finding the right team or person, or maybe doing it yourself. I actually taught myself the Meta machine from an Australian course, funny enough. Maybe you know the guys, but they have this course all about Facebook ads. And I took the course back in 2020, but then ultimately felt like it's not something I wanted to spend, time doing. So I hired someone, but at least I can have an intelligent conversation now with that person and I can understand.
100%.
It's so important to have informed conversations. So even if you teach yourself the basics so that you understand when things aren't working or not working, because otherwise it can be so frustrating. If something isn't working, you're spending money on it, and then you feel like a lack of trust because you're not sure if this person is actually as skilled as they say they are. And so for me, just having that base knowledge and that foundational knowledge helped me just become more trusting in the different, freelancers that I hire, and being able to have a conversation with them about that thing.
I totally agree with that, 100%. How have you approached the money piece of kind of, we all know in D2C and retail and things like that, the working capital piece is really important. In the beginning, you were bootstrapping, you were funding it yourself. How has that kind of progressed, and what's your plan at the moment?
Yeah, we actually bootstrapped for a long time. I mean, really up until Shark Tank, that was the first time we raised money. So it was so nimble. It still is. And so you get so creative when you don't have that much money to spend. You become so creative. And then things also come in your path, and resources come in your path. If people believe in your story, they want to help you in different ways. But at some point, more capital is just absolutely necessary. And so this is actually the stage we're at right now, where we raised, money from Kevin. But then in order for us to really launch the brick and mortar strategy, like the traditional retail strategy next year that we're planning on, we're going to need more capital. So that's something that I'm exploring right now. There's so many options. Equity crowdfunding is really interesting to me. I'm not sure who would go to a VC. So this is a conversation that I'll be having with our team and with Kevin's team to figure out the next steps.
Ooh, very exciting. New learning curve, new stuff to learn.
Totally, yes. It is new for us. So this is something that is not exactly in my wheelhouse yet, but that's what happens with being an entrepreneur, is that something new will always come up that you have to figure out and learn, and you will, because you're an entrepreneur and you're going to figure it out. You will.
You will. Absolutely. We have talked about so many of kind of the highlights to your story and, what's been going really well. And that's, what we all love to hear. But being an entrepreneur, there are also so many lows and so many challenges that we face that I think it's important to also talk about and bring to the surface, so everyone listening who's going through highs and lows can relate. Are there any sort of challenges you've been dealing with recently, or any challenges that come to mind that you've had to overcome in this journey of building Magic Dates?
Yes, relationships are so important. Not just, with mentors or with partners, but also especially with consumer goods, just finding the right distributor and broker partner is so key. And we had just a terrible experience in the past in 2019 with a broker that ended up, costing us money of wasted product and just time of, them saying that they're going to deliver XYZ and then they didn't. And then you put all your eggs in that basket because that's the relationship you're investing in. You're investing resources, time, energy, and you're expecting things to go a certain way. You make certain predictions about your business based on that relationship and what they say to you. And it didn't pan out. So I would just say it's so important who you partner with in that regard. Distributors and brokers love to bring on new hip products that, oh my God, I'm so old. Why did I say hip? I swear. But trendy products But at the end of the day, if they don't have the infrastructure to really support your brand the way that it deserves to be supported, it's just going to fall through the cracks. So I think for us, that was a big thing. And I wouldn't say it's a challenge now. It's just something that we're working on, is like finding those right partners. And I think we have, but it's just a matter of giving it a little bit more time to see how it actually goes, with the current brokers and distributors we're working with. So TBD.
TBD. Very cool. What does the future look like? What are you excited about that you can shout about?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm excited to see what else we can do with dates. We have them, we launched this date flight in the summer, and it's the first time that customers have gotten a taste of other varieties. Most of our customers say they've only ever heard of medjool dates, and they were excited to know, first of all, there are like over 60 varieties that are domesticated now. There were like hundreds of varieties historically. And so we're just sharing 4 here, but then there are like dozens of others. So it's so exciting to know that there's so much more, that we can share with our audience. And yeah, what else can we use dates in? What can we make out of them? How else can they fulfill our sweet tooth, new and interesting ways? That's what I'm really curious about and like excited to try.
Oof, I'm excited for you. I'm excited for everyone. I'm excited for me. It sounds amazing.
We got to bring it over to Australia too.
Yeah, you got to bring it here, launch it here. It'll be great. What advice do you have for other founders who are early on in the journey and just getting started?
I would say really do your homework. I mean, it always feels like things are moving at such a fast pace that you just want to catch up and make sure that you're in the game. And to a certain extent, that's true. You have to pull the trigger on things. At the same time, execution is really important. And so from the get-go, just really do your research on, first of all, is this going to do well in the market? Do people want this? That's really the most important thing. Like, do customers want this? Don't be so attached to the idea, and like, don't let your ego get in the way just because it's your baby. When they say, kill the baby, I hate that analogy, but just take your ego out of the way and try to think of it as objectively as possible, because if you don't, it prevents you from coming up with other better ideas or really just veering and taking a different path. And so I would just say be as egoless as possible when it comes to that, and really consider that retail is very expensive. That's something that I've learned. We did have a national launch in 2020 and it didn't go as planned because COVID happened. And so things come up that are just so outside of your control. We got this new account. Maybe I won't say their name. I don't want to throw them under the bus. It was all good, but it's this retailer here in the United States, and we went national with them. We actually created the 4 chocolate covered SKUs for them, expecting that it was going to be a repeat item. And they were on the shelves for about 2 months. They said it was the fastest moving date product they'd ever had. And so we were excited for those reorders. And then since they were not a traditional grocer, they basically shut down for COVID for about six or 7 months. And so that was like a big chunk of business that we were expecting to have that year. And then we didn't. And, just keep that in mind, that like things are very fickle in retail. And that if you are going to be in stores, like, don't be attached to this like romantic idea that you're going to be in thousands of stores and just be all over the place. It really is just about focusing more on the retailers that are key for you and supporting them as much as possible. Demos, promos, having feet on the ground in store is so important, because it is absolutely 100% true that it is difficult to get into stores and it's more difficult to stay on the shelves. That is absolutely like 100% true wisdom that any perishable CPG brand should be aware of.
Great advice. Yeah. And I love that. It's like, focus on all of your foundational stuff first, like just one at a time, like build on like your building blocks and keep stacking it. I love that. So we are up to the 6 quick questions, part of the episode. I ask them all at the end. Some of them we might have covered, some of them we might not have, but I still ask them all the same. So question number 1 is, what's your why? Why do you wake up every day and work on magic dates?
That's an awesome question, because it can't just be about what it is. Like for me, it's not just about creating delicious snacks. Culture is so important for me, and connection and empathy, and really getting to know others. Again, even if it's not consistent with your own ideology, and maybe if it goes against your own beliefs or values or whatever it might be, this is how I live my life. I'm always open to conversations with people who I don't understand, especially people I don't understand. And so for me, that's my why with Magic Dates, is really opening up that conversation around culture, around my culture, around the Middle East, and having people have this glimpse of this misunderstood culture and like how much beauty and wisdom, innovation and like great food and love and family and all these great values that we have in the Middle East and the diversity. And that's what keeps me going. And I just also love the freedom that I have, honestly, within my business. It's like we can do anything. Like we're just creating. Like we're creating, and if there's something I want to create, I can. So I just love that freedom also within my business.
Absolutely, that is so cool. I love that. Question number 2 is, what has been your favorite marketing moment so far?
I mean, I think Shark Tank would have to take the win on that one. That's, I think, a big thing for a lot of companies. It's so funny. The second you start a company, everyone tells you, you got to get on Shark Tank. So it's almost like you apply just because it's like a knee-jerk reaction. It's like, oh, I have a business, I should apply to Shark Tank now. I think it's perceived by a lot of people as like the ultimate thing you can do for your business. It may or may not be true. You definitely do get a lot of credibility being on that show. It's such a cool show, 14 seasons in, to still have so much like respect from like the audience for such a long time. So I think that's been our biggest win so far.
So far, exactly. More to come. Question number 3 is, what's your go-to business resource if you have to think about a book or a podcast or a newsletter that you consume?
I don't know if you can get everything from like one place, but I'm definitely on a bunch of newsletters and I get tidbits from all of them. There's this one newsletter called DTC by Mini Social that I love, that kind of gets more in the nooks and crannies. I love Startup CPG. They have a lot of resources, like lists of things like brokers and website developers and just different services that, a business may need, amongst other things. Rodeo CPG is another one. And for me personally, like, Kevin O'Leary's team, that's something that if I, need advice or like big picture stuff. And then of course my team who I work with, who are just industry like experts, I kind of go to them for like decisions and strategies.
Amazing. So many good ones there. Love that. Going to link them in the show notes. Question number 4 is, how do you win the day? What are your AM or PM rituals and habits that keep you feeling happy and successful and motivated?
So first of all, I've been to therapy. I love therapy. Every entrepreneur should do therapy, or every person should do therapy. And that's been very helpful for me for creating boundaries and just really reshifting my mind to take care of myself and not fall for this culture of like go, go, go and like working myself to the bone. Like I really do not ascribe to that at all. Sleep is so important for me. And so all my rituals revolve around my waking up and then my going to sleep. So just sleep hygiene. I'm not looking at my phone an hour before. I'm reading something inspiring. So I'm reading a book called Real Magic right now. So even if it's a few pages, it's just like the last thing that's in my mind before I go to bed. I try to focus on my breath a lot because at some point it was something that I was having, difficulty with like anxiety and like panics and whatnot. And so really reconnecting to my breath and connecting to my body at any time of the day is something that's important. And again, because I love food, I think nutrition is so important. And so just eating things that are just like fulfilling my soul and nourishing me. And I cook a lot. And so home cooked meals for me for dinner are really important. Even when I'm tired, that's just something that nourishes me. And in the morning, just that cup of tea. I don't drink caffeine. I don't drink alcohol. That's why sleep is so important, because I don't drink coffee. So I need to get to bed early, 9:30, 10:30 for me to just really get those, 7 to 8 hours of sleep. So it's like really basic. It's nothing crazy. I don't think you need to be getting too deep into, supplements or make things complicated. I think if you keep it really simple and just take care of yourself and take a break when you need it.
All good ones. All great rituals in there. Love it. Question number 5 is, what's been your worst money mistake and how much did it cost you?
So yes, I think I mentioned this relationship we had with a broker in 2019. That was, I think, the most costly mistake, because it's just, you just see it being wasted. It was like 2 pallets of product, I think worth like $30,000, aside from the money that we'd invested in them, of, in the retainer for 6 months. But that was something that $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 was what it cost us. And for a bootstrap business that like didn't raise money, as I mentioned earlier, and has been very resourceful, it was definitely a painful experience and a learning lesson.
Big learning lesson. Question number 6, last question. What is just a crazy story, good or bad, that you've had from building Magic Dates?
I think you just like can't be afraid to get your hands dirty, like just doing whatever it is that you need to do. So for me, one time I was expecting a shipment on a Friday. It was supposed to arrive at 3:30 p.m. And I actually paid for guaranteed shipping, like guaranteed delivery. So I get to my warehouse facility and they don't arrive. 3:30, 3:45, 4 o'clock. I call them and then they say the shipment is on the truck, but the driver is not going to make it. It's going to a warehouse, the freight warehouse about 20 minutes away, and that it's going to get delivered Monday. So I absolutely could not have had it sit over the weekend because we have chocolate and they leave product in trailers unless you actually get a refrigerated trailer. And so I rented a truck. I went to that warehouse. I located my pallets. I picked them up and I took them to my storage unit and like unloaded them. And by then it was like 10 p.m. and I was there from like 3 o'clock. And it was just like a no brainer. Like there was not even a moment where I was thinking like, what's happening? What am I doing? It was like, you just need to get things done. I mean, that's like one of honestly like dozens of stories where like things like that just happen all the time and you just get it done. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty.
Oh my God. The magic dates truck coming to a city near you soon.
Totally. We need to get, yeah, one of those like food trucks and then sling dates from the from the back window.
Oh my gosh, 100%. Diana, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for coming on the show to share your journey with magic dates. I'm so excited for you. I'm going to be cheering for your success.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. I love chatting with you and I hope I have some fun, exciting updates for you over the next, few months.